He's not coming.
He's not, okay. All right. It being 7:24 in the evening, we will officially call the formal meeting of the Swazi zoning board of adjustment for May 16th to order. I will ask Sarah to call the roll.
Keith Tebow,
Here.
Adam Mulhern,
Here.
Brian Rogers,
Here.
Bill Hutwalker, Ann Karasinski, here, Eric Callio, Julian Excel, Wayne Lecklider,
Here.
Thank you very much. Tonight's agenda is as follows. After reading of the agenda, we'll have a vote on regional impact. Minutes will be considered of April 18th. We do have 4 people here who were at that meeting, and May 3rd, we had 3 people here who were at that meeting. Tonight we have 2 applications on the agenda. One is ZBA number 22-003. It's a variance application. It's a rehearing. We will have a public hearing. Chris and Ann Hamilton request a variance from section 4, article A3 of the zoning ordinance to construct a single-family dwelling without the required 225-foot frontage on a town/state maintained road on Talbot Hill Road. The property shown at tax map 44 lot 10 located in the rural agricultural district. Our second hearing is ZBA number 22-007. It's a special exception. We will be having a public hearing. Michael Gittard of Frog Brewing requests a special exception pursuant to section 5, article B2A of the zoning ordinance to establish a manufacturing use, a brewery on property shown at tax map 56 lot 3 on Sawyer's Crossing Road. The subject property is located in the business district. We have some discussion regarding adopting fees for ZBA applications, and then any other business as may be required.
Motion, we accept the minutes as written for April 18th.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of April 18th, 2022. Any question on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank
Can I
you.
abstain because I was not even.
Exactly. I'll seat you when we get to the number 6 public hearing.
Make a motion, we accept the May minutes as written.
Thank you.
May 3rd.
May 3rd. It's been, we have a second on that motion.
Second.
Can't second.
Can I second the motion and not abstain from the vote?
Yeah, sure.
There we go.
Okay, yeah, so it's a move to second to accept the minutes of May 3rd, 2022. President, that meeting that we're at, that are at this meeting is myself and Brian. Any question on the motion? It's me and myself and Brian voting on this. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate so by saying aye.
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 You eyed it? Okay. Okay. Before we move into the public hearings, I will seat Wayne for Bill Hutwalker, Wayne Lecklider for Bill Hutwalker. We are at a ZBA 22-003, a variance application, which is a rehearing. Chris and Ann Hamilton request a variance from section 4, article A3 of the zoning ordinance to construct a single-family dwelling without the required 220-foot frontage on a state/town maintained road located on Talbot Hill Road. The property shown at tax map 44 lot 10 and is located in the rural agricultural district.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if we could just regional impact,
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
I would make a motion that neither of the applications rise to the level of regional impact.
Thank you very much, Adam, for having my back on that one. Skip right over it. Have a second on that motion?
Yep. Second.
Moved by Adam, seconded by Brian, that neither one of our cases tonight would rise to the level of having a regional impact. Any question on the motion? All in favor of the motion, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Aye. Those opposed? No? Okay, that carries. So we are at this rehearing of variance application number 22-003. Chris and Ann Hamilton requested variance in section 4, article A3 of the zoning ordinance to construct a single-family dwelling without the required 225-foot frontage on a town or state maintained road on Talbot Hill Road. Property is shown at tax map 44, lot 10, located in the rural agricultural district. Seated for this would be myself, Ann, Adam, Brian, and Wayne. I guess what I'll do is I'll ask Sarah just to tee this up a bit. We just as something we will need to do, maybe before we get going on that, would be to make a motion, or I would entertain a motion to take the record of the first hearing that we had, that all of the record minutes and other information from that meeting get into the record for this meeting. So all the work that we did at the first one, all that evidence, all of the information, minutes, and so forth. So I'd entertain a motion to carry all that information over and have it be part of this record.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to include previous testimony, previous information that was presented on our last meeting, as well as additional meeting that occurred, to be carried forward to this particular application as well.
And included with the minutes,
included with
the record of this meeting. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second it. I
Okay.
just wanted to make a statement that I've gone over all of it. I wasn't at the original
Right.
hearing, but I have gone over all of the documents and the notes, and so I feel
Okay.
comfortable with.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's been moved by Adam and seconded by Wayne to include the record from the previous public hearing and everything that went along with it into the record of this meeting. Do you have any questions on that motion? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor of that motion, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. We will have a public hearing. You folks, anybody here who is interested in this can, I'll open a public hearing right now for this meeting, or reopen the public hearing. Anything new you might have to add to this information, we can hear tonight. I just do ask that we don't rehash too much of what went on at the last meeting, which is fine if you need to, but if you've got any new information you'd like the board to have right now, this is an opportunity to entertain any new information you might have. State your name if you don't mind, for you know who you are, but just for the record.
Ann Hamilton.
Christopher Hamilton, thank you. We're here tonight just to set the record straight that there was apparently a procedural error in our last meeting. And we're hoping to rectify that tonight in some fashion, but this isn't a public hearing. We'll give you the opportunity to present anything you want to present to us tonight, and anyone here who has the desire to speak or address or ask questions of the applicant or to just go on record, we'll have that opportunity too. So I think we'll give the Hamiltons a chance here to give us any information that they have.
So I think we want to start by, I think we do have a few questions before we get into
Okay.
more of our additions that we're going to add. So the first question would be to kind of explain to us what did happen, because at the end of the last public hearing, it passed by majority vote,
Right.
but it failed by the ordinance, the number 2.
Mhm.
So we technically did pass, but we technically failed, but we technically passed. So we kind of want a little bit more of a description kind of to understand.
I'll explain how I see it, and certainly Sarah can add in around the edges there. In dealing with a variance application, we have 5 criteria that we have to consider. And it's the practice of this board, and it's the recommended practice for us to go through every one of those criteria one by one and vote on them. And we did, we went through that. And of the 5 criteria, 4 of them, the majority of the sitting board voted in the affirmative. That particular criteria, we did, in essence, this case met that criteria. The spirit of the ordinance, which I think you referred to as number 2,
Yes.
I think it is number 2. And I've been through both the minutes of the meeting and the voice tape of the meeting. There were 3 votes that said that this particular application did not meet the spirit of the ordinance, and 2 that said that it did. If any of the practice of this board and the way that it's been set up through litigation and other things over the years, is that if any one of those 5 criteria fail, the application is supposed to fail. And we went through and voted in the affirmative, but in essence, that because one of the criteria wasn't met, we couldn't take that vote.
So even though
according to
that-
our past practice and what we've been instructed to do as a board. I don't
So
know if
even though
there's anything-
criteria 2 failed on the actual vote as we go down 1 through 5, but it was strong enough to hold though that it was put through 3-2 for the vote. So it kind of feels like is there a double vote?
No, it's the same vote. As I said, if any one of the criteria fail, the entire application for variance needs to fail. That's the way this has been, the practice of this board and the way I understand it. I don't know if you have anything to add, Sarah, to what I've.
That covers it.
Okay. Another question? Or?
The next question would be also, are we having a whole rehearing here when we were at the special meeting to decide that we were coming back for the rehearing?
Yep.
It was stated, was it Michael Brantley stood up and said that Swansea's legal counsel said that we don't need to start from the beginning,
That's true.
that we don't need to start from scratch, I think was actually his words,
Mhm.
that we were only going to hear number 2. I believe at least one board member asked if it was only going to be number 2. It was said yes, and you guys voted on number 2. But it sounds like we're starting from scratch when we're.
No, we're just
talking to
asking
Hannah.
if you have any new information. All of the information carries over from the last meeting.
So are you guys re-voting? I guess the question would be, are you re-voting all the way down or just on number 2?
I think I would take a vote all the way through.
You have anything else?
Any reason why you've heard from council that we shouldn't take every?
No.
Okay,
Even though they said we're only coming for criteria 2,
well, criteria 2 is the one that failed.
right? And but
Council,
agreed, Michael Brantley stated that we're only focusing on criteria 2. So we were under the understanding that if we're only focusing on criteria 2, how can we go through and re-vote on all 5 if he was stating we're only here for criteria 2?
council indicated that the board is allowed to only hear criteria 2 if they choose.
Okay,
So if we're only allowed to hear criteria 2 issues, then you're voting on everything, even though we're not supposed to be adding anything to them, but you're going to re-vote on them, even though we're not adding anything.
I guess, I mean, make sure I understand the
So
question. You're saying you're not adding anything more to the record?
Well, you're stating that we're only supposed to add any information for criteria 2, that's it, but you're voting on everything else.
I think that's what she's saying, and if I could just restate it.
Help me, yeah.
Okay, I think she's saying that since it was discussed at the special meeting, that we were only going to deal with question 2,
Mhm.
that the answers or the votes for questions 1 and 3 and 4 and 5 remain the way they were,
Mhm.
and that we would only be considering question 2.
Pretty much, I mean, is that the case?
think
But you're
that's-
saying that you're gonna re-vote on all 5, not just 2.
Well, that would be my intention, but because I think that's the way we were counseled.
To vote on all 5.
Is that true? I mean, I didn't talk to council directly on this. I know the staff have. We've not been here.
The board can do either. That is
Okay.
what council said.
Okay. Okay. I think then before we get to that point, I'd probably poll this board and see if, in terms of what they feel needs to be done, whether or not we should go over all 5 or just focus in on number 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Just feels like we were told number 2 and we're gonna feel like we're starting from scratch.
Well, we're really not starting from scratch because the only information that we're looking to get from either yourself or anyone else here who's looking to give information is anything that we didn't hear before.
Mhm. I guess
But
it
the
does feel
board
like
here
we're
may-
starting
I
from
mean,
scratch,
the-
but
this-
we're
it'll be
gonna
up to
vote all
this-
the way down. Again, it feels like feels like it's starting from scratch.
Okay.
All right, so I guess we'll move on to, can you give us the explanation of the definition of the spirit of the ordinance for what criteria 2 while we're here?
It's one of the criteria that I think anyone at the table might have somewhat of a different sense about. But the idea is, in essence, the ordinance was created for a reason. And what we're trying to determine is that whether your case fits with the spirit of that intention by the voters of this town that was set up. So we have to determine, the way I see it, is that the spirit of the ordinance, the reason for the ordinance being voted in is your request is in concert with that spirit, with the way the ordinance was written and the way it is that given the nature of your request and what you want to do, it's sort of, it runs with the ordinance itself. It meets the spirit of the ordinance, meets the reason for the ordinance. So that your case, really, you deserve a variance because your case is similar to, meets the spirit, what the city town was trying to do with that ordinance.
Mhm.
Okay. Just 1 second. Okay, we're in a public hearing, so I guess if you like.
I was just gonna suggest procedurally.
Yeah, just need to-
Jeremy Hawkins Smith, I represent the landowner.
Mhm.
It would seem to me that before you put people through testifying, you ought to have a vote and see what they're going to testify about, whether it's limited to spirit of the ordinance or whether it's the
Mhm.
whole thing.
Mhm.
It would seem to me that vote should be taken in fairness before the hearing and not at the end of the hearing.
Okay.
It would seem to me that given the shifting sands that they are, I think that's what they're trying to convey here. That would yet appear to be another shifting sand if they got to the end of this and you said, oh, we're gonna do a full read. I think, I'm just suggesting that for the record, it would be good for everyone to know what you're going to actually consider and vote on tonight before the evidence starts coming in.
Okay.
And I don't know, Steve.
Go ahead, Tom.
The Hamiltons were aware that all 5 criteria would be reconsidered. We have had correspondence in the last several weeks indicating as much, so it should not be a surprise if all 5 are reconsidered.
It isn't really necessarily, you did email correspond with us, but it feels like the contradictory back and forth of Michael Brantley stated in the special meeting that we're not starting from scratch, it's only criteria 5. Members had asked that question, it got voted upon in that special meeting that it was criteria 5. And then 2 and not the full 5. And then you're telling us it's the 5. So
Well,
that's,
I
again,
think
it's very
it'll be up to this,
contradictory
it'll be up to
back and
this,
forth.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That was just gonna say, it's very.
It'll be up to
contradictory
this board to decide whether they want to deliberate and decide on all 5 criteria or just the spirit of the
I
ordinance.
do agree, it
I
would be
will-
nice to know what we are going to be testifying on,
Sure.
what information, if we're doing
Sure.
all 5, if we're doing 2, just number 2.
I would
Any thoughts?
suggest that, Mr. Chairman, if I may, that typically when we discuss as a board, we usually close the public hearing, but in the case of this, we're not doing that.
Mhm.
And I think it is a fair statement to understand before we close that board or that hearing, what it is that we will be voting on. So I think that does make sense for us as a board to decide that prior.
Sure.
So I don't think we have to entertain a motion necessarily to do that, or do we from a parliamentary procedure?
I think if it's the consensus of the board one way or the other, and there's no one that is strongly, in feels one way or the other, that the board, that we probably wouldn't want to go to a vote, but I guess it's a consensus of the board. Anyone else have any thoughts, Ann or Wayne or Brian, about what approach?
I agree with what Adam said. I think we should just publicly poll us to see which criteria that we are voting on. It's
Okay.
unfortunate that Michael said that because he doesn't have a vote on the board, but it was said. So you're correct. It's this board that has the authority, and I agree.
Yeah, I mean, a previous
Let's
board.
take a vote.
So in terms of this, I think one thing to also note is that we shouldn't be influenced by public discussion. This should be, I don't know if you should close the hearing for a second, just to have this vote, if that's
Okay.
necessary, and then reopen it. So that we can speak freely amongst the board members
Okay.
Yeah,
without
but
further
I don't think we
influence.
need to do that though, do we? Or, I mean, I have a compunction either way,
Okay.
entirely up to you and the chairman.
As long as it's just the board's decision.
Right.
That's it. That's really the intention.
Ann, any thoughts at this point?
Are we going to close the meeting to discuss that?
I think we could do that if that's if the board has that consensus as well.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, Wayne?
I don't think it's necessary to close the hearing, but I would like to see a motion just to formalize
Yeah.
it. So if Adam wanted to make a motion, I think I'd probably second somebody.
To formalize, to close the,
No, to make the motion on whether we consider all 5 questions or just number 2. I think that's the path we're going
okay,
down.
that is, so let me make a motion for the board to decide on whether we will be hearing all 5 criteria and be voting on all those, or we'll be voting specifically on question 2.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Let's say the motion again.
Yeah.
You confused me a little bit. I mean, what direction do you want us to go?
I think that, all right, so like this, let me make a motion that the board only hears question 2.
Okay,
I'll second that.
Okay,
I'll third that.
any question on the motion from any board members? All in favor of Adam's motion, please indicate so by saying aye. I'm gonna say no, just on principle, so I'll vote no on that, but it passes. So we will, in this sense, because of that, we'll take up just question number 2.
Just question number 2.
What do you know?
Would you like to,
I think that was a fair question, though.
yeah, thank you. for
Because it was stated by our town administrator at the last meeting. I think it was a fair question. So thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, sure, thank you, everybody, for doing this. So I guess, that being said, we have to
So now
give
we're
only
gonna-
question 2, and you have the opportunity
So now
to,
we're sticking to 2. All of our other votes are are there.
Well, we also do have to vote for the finality of the, so I would guess it would be question 2 as well as a yay or nay to pass the ordinance variance or deny it. So I guess
Well,
that's 2
that's-
parts.
Right. I just meant we're not hearing 1, 3, 4, 5.
okay? Go ahead, do you have anything you want to add relative to question 2?
I think we do.
Sure.
All right, so our understanding of the variance in the spirit of the ordinance, we just want to make sure we're understanding clarity.
Mhm.
So according to the New Hampshire ZBA handbook, section 2, page 10, it quotes that the variance is a waiver of any provision of the ordinance authorizing the landowner to use his or her land in a manner that would otherwise violate the ordinance and may be granted by the Board of Adjustment on appeal. So we just want to we just feel like when we're talking about variances at the past meeting, it feels like everybody just says it's not allowed per the ordinance. And we kind of feel like everybody forgets to say without a variance, that's why we're here.
Mhm.
And so to say straight out about that, it just, I feel like it misleads if people don't understand. I would assume you guys all understand that, but I just don't feel like it's a fair statement. And truthfully, if it wasn't allowed with a variance, there wouldn't be any building on class 6 roads prior to this. Variances have been granted multiple times. Some of them went through in 17 minutes. So we want to give you a list of class 6 homes and or variances.
Mhm.
Number 1, 4 Sycamore Hill Road, built in 1779. 7 Sycamore Hill Road, built in 1853. 600 Cobble Hill Road, built in 1968. 139 Oliver Hill Road, built in 1970. 564 Cobble Hill Road, built in 1972. 85 Sycamore Hill Road, built in 1974. 71 Sycamore Hill Road, built in 1987. And that had an approved variance. 268 Forest Ave, built in 1988. It was an illegal build. 46 Sycamore Hill Road, 2003, was approved with a variance. 110 Oliver Hill Road, built in 2006, 2006 approved variance, no build. And then the Prescott subdivision on the opposite end of Talbot Hill, 2019, that was an approved variance. So we just want to kind of make it feels like last time that they don't happen. They do happen, and there's a list. We understand some of those are got some old dates on them, but the point is there's, whether they had the variance, there's plenty of homes on class 6 roads.
Mhm.
So especially with the ones with the variance passed, all the houses observe the spirit of the ordinance, because if they didn't, they wouldn't have gotten their variance. So we're having a hard time to understand what makes our proposed law any different. We're trying to help us understand why it doesn't observe the spirit of the ordinance.
Well, I think that's a difficult question to answer at this point in time, but it's also known that this board has denied equivalent amount of variances to build on class 6 roads in the last 20 years. It's really,
Couldn't find any.
Yes.
We asked.
Can you give us any examples?
right off the top of my head, no. I haven't done that research.
I mean, the one that really sticks out, we discussed this last time, Prescott, it's the opposite end of the road. How can you look at, what is it, 1,000 feet? 1,000 feet difference, there's one lot in between the articles lot. What makes it, and that one passed in 17 minutes, 5 straight across.
Yeah.
Can you explain the difference of the opposite end of the road, the spirit of the ordinance was observed unanimously, it wasn't close.
I not having been at that meeting, nor have that information.
Yeah, you are.
You were there,
I was at that meeting.
Yep.
And what year was that?
2019.
Where would it be?
You want to see it?
Sure.
For the record, could you just indicate what we're sharing?
This is Swansea Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting minutes from February 11th, 2019.
Mr. Chairman, can I address one of the other questions?
Please do.
So to be fair, every variance application is taken on its own.
Mhm.
I mean, in terms of the criteria and how those apply to each one of those variance applications, it's taken one by one by one. We don't try to take too much precedent from what's happened in the past. The ordinance states that, and this is something that the board has come up with, you know, the town voters have come up with these ordinances and voted on them. And it's our job to, you know, to help people who try to find relief when it fits within the criteria that we have got in front of us. So we don't make any of these rules. We didn't vote on any of the ordinance. I mean, we didn't create the ordinance that was voted on. But we try to, you know, interpret as best we can each application fairly. So when we look back at that our other variances that may have been granted, it's helpful for us as a board to say, okay, this is, in this instance, this worked, or this instance, it didn't. But we try to be fair with each application as they come through. So I don't know if that kind of answers at least one of your questions, you know, in terms of how this could go versus your particular variance application. So hopefully it was helpful.
I can share this with anyone who wants to look at it. Bobby's difference seems to be here is that about 50 feet of a 225-foot frontage was on a class 6 road, which means about 175 feet was of that frontage was on a class 5 road or better.
No,
They only had what, 50?
they had 0 on class 5.
This is a different way that I read it, but I can let John, if you want to take a quick look at this, just so you see. I mean, I think your comments of every variance.
But even if
The
they,
50 feet was to the driveway. They're using 50 feet of class 6.
Right.
This is the Prescott home, correct? They're pulling off, they're driving off of a paved road at the top of Talbot Hill, no?
I think it's on the top of the Talbot Hill. The other.
It's off the asphalt.
How far is it?
He's right.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Jonathan Hogan, 196 East Shore Road, Swansea.
I mean, we understand that every one of them is different, but even the arguable, if you were thinking that it's 50 feet, the ordinance states 225 feet. So regardless, unless there's a sliding scale, which obviously there's not, it meant that they didn't meet the requirement, just as we don't meet the requirement.
Any other questions of the board or comments as we move into this move through this process.
We're still, you're not, or we're still not done. If we just.
Oh, no,
Okay,
that's fine.
just wanted to make sure we're just waiting
No,
for
that's
that to
fine.
circulate, so everybody.
As we work on this,
Yeah.
go ahead, and do you have other,
Okay,
But you, Sarah has got the notes for those minutes to be entered in. I'm assuming you'll share that listing with her as well. If you don't mind, just email it to her for the record.
Yeah.
Okay.
all right. Again, we just feel like the word variance keeps on getting forgotten. Like, I mean, we feel like you could describe it basically as like a release valve. That we get that the ordinance states this, but if we didn't, if we didn't need a variance, or you didn't need a special exception, there'd be a lot less meetings ever happening.
Hmm.
I mean, we feel that if the literal enforcement was held, it would cause a hardship for our property, hence why we require the variance.
Mhm.
We also feel that if it's denied, that there really is no reasonable use for a 61-acre lot. At fair market value on that property, if it's deemed that the variance doesn't get approved, it becomes an unbuildable lot. So I mean, that's a hardship, that's a loss for the owner. I mean, I don't know if you guys can think of any other reasonable uses of it, but I mean, we can't, what else? What could you use a 61-acre lot if it's unbuildable? That takes away from the owner's right to use it in a reasonable way.
I think the answer, somewhat of the answer to that is our ordinance, what our ordinance states right now is that you can't build on a class 6 road, basically. and-
Without a variance.
Without a variance. Way to change that is get the ordinance changed, which works through a planning board, and it's a process that we go through. If you voted this year, you saw that the planning board worked really hard at getting zoning changes promulgated and put forth. And a variance by its very nature is requested when something is not allowed, meaning the variance, it's yes, you can apply, but it's in essence, a variance is needed when there is no other path. There's no route. You're basically asking, we have a town ordinance, and the relief valve is such that you're asking this board whether your particular property rises to the level at which the town's laws, the town's ordinance doesn't apply. So what we have, when you apply for a variance, that's what you have to prove, is that the town's ordinance says one thing, and you have to prove that your lot is either unique in such a way or or meets the spirit, in this case, of that the ordinance was set up for.
In which
So
we do,
it's-
right? Because if we're keeping number 5, it was voted. There was
Number
only
2.
one. Right, no, but you're talking about, when you were talking about it being unique,
Mm.
that would go into number 5, that what distinguishes it from other properties. And it was already voted, because we're keeping that vote. It was
Right,
voted.
oh yeah, that was voted, but you have all 5 criteria, right? Have to
Right,
be
and
met.
you
It's
were just
not
talking
like
about it being unique. I just want
3
to
out of
clarify that
5.
we already are considered that it is, it's a landlocked piece.
Hey, Brian. It picks up right there. Anything else?
Yep. So again, back to the New Hampshire zoning handbook, section 2, page 12. Spirit of the ordinance is observed. And this is quote from there. In general, the provision must promote health, safety, and general welfare of the community. It continues, in deciding whether or not a variance will violate the spirit and intent of the ordinance, the Board of Adjustment must determine the legal purpose the ordinance serves and the reason it was enacted. This may include a review of the master plan upon which the ordinance was based. So now if we go to Swansea's master plan on page 22, class 6 roads is described, unmaintained, this is all quoted, unmaintained highways. These are all other existing public ways that are not maintained by the town and have not been for 5 or consecutive more years. While subdivision of land is usually restricted on class 6 roads, the potential for development exists if the roads are upgraded to a class 5 status, either by the landowner or the town. And we have stated before, we understand that will be brought up on our dime with getting an engineer, drainage studies. We've already stated that we would do that. But the fact that the ordinance is supposed to be based off the master plan, and the master plan says that it is potential for development. We're not asking to subdivide like the Prescotts. We're asking just to be able to build a single family dwelling on 61 acres.
The Prescotts used the snow storage as part of their spirit of the ordinance. We're kind of doing the same thing with the drainage and engineering study that potentially could help the entire East Shore Road, Brown Ave, everybody. As you saw tonight. In Joe DeRusso's letter.
That was part of the packet, and Joe DeRusso said that he's already had complaints from East Shore Road and is it Brown Lane? It's a private way.
Right.
That there's already been complaints. The way we see this is, it's not gonna be fixed right now because it's class 6 road, because we understand that he would have to come to the town. You have a whole policy of how he
Right.
works, DPW works on class 6 roads. Kind of, I mean, we're doing the favor of, if we get our variance, we're doing the favor, it's on our dime, we're fixing, agreeing that we're gonna fix, we're gonna maintain that portion of the road. From the bottom where we all met,
Mhm.
like we stated, we're not going all the way, we're going to where our driveway would be.
Right.
So it kind of seems like a win, really, for everybody. Town's getting upgraded. I mean, when you go back to between the variance and the health, safety, and general welfare, if you get 300 feet, you saw what it looks like now. If you upgrade that, it's still gonna be class 5, class 6. We can't quite wrap our head around there. We understand we're gonna be maintaining it, whatever it's called after that fact, because it said it has to be class 5 status.
Mhm.
It's gonna be much safer when it's fixed up. People use those for, not four-wheeling, but bring a Jeep up there, whatever kind of recreational you'd like to call that.
Mhm.
Somebody rolls over, somebody crashes, you get 300 feet is a lot better than having no 100 feet of getting somebody in there to rescue somebody. I mean, and you get the first 300, who's to say? The next lot over, maybe they'll jump on the bandwagon and say, we want to build 2. That's up to you guys of doing variance. We're not counting on that, but we're just saying, you could imagine what could happen. We're just focusing on our lot, but we're throwing out the possibilities of what could happen for the town of Swansea, of how that could help the general welfare of people. That thing keeps on washing out. East Shore Road, they could have effects to it. We're trying to help make the first steps to improve that.
Okay.
Do you have
I
any
have
other-
a quick question.
Sure, this is.
For you on the, I wasn't at the special meeting itself, and I recall looking through the minutes here. When you just discussed that a portion of road that was from your driveway going down to East Shore.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm misremembering, but in terms of that space between, are you suggesting that you will maintain and do, you said drainage studies and so forth, and
Joe DeRusso has recommended a engineer, certified civil engineer,
Mhm.
to go in and do a drainage and erosion study.
I believe that should have been that was in tonight's packet.
Yeah, that's in tonight's packet.
okay.
I asked the same thing, Adam, when Mike Jasmine was up there. I said, this isn't gonna be Joe DeRusso telling the property owner what to do. It's gonna be engineered and done correctly. And sure, Mike said, absolutely.
So it would be happening, okay.
We've been in contact with Fieldstone, and they said they'd be more than happy to help us out if we get a variance.
Anything else to add at this point? We're not going to close the public hearing.
Okay, no, I didn't know if we're waiting on time to find it before we move on. Okay. So if we go to the Swansea zoning ordinance, page 2, the rural agricultural district is in where this property sits. The definition of the district is designed to accommodate residents of the agricultural uses and what commonly recognized as being the rural atmosphere. The property included within the district will generally be agricultural, forestry, low-density housing, open space protection, water supply protection, and recreation. The district is a potential future growth area for the town and is carefully controlled and monitored planning and rezoning to prevent scattered premature development. So we're looking to build the one-family dwelling on 61 acres. We're leaving the fair share of it undeveloped. We don't feel that it can get much more rural than that. 61 acres with one house. That's everything is left. We're not asking for subdivisions. We just want one big piece of land. Do you have anything to add before? So in closing, I guess for us, we just feel that we're not asking for something that has not been done in this town We're asking just to be treated fairly, the same way others have been treated. We're asking to be treated the way of people that have previously been given variances in class 6 roads. Just a little bit of our background. Our previous home was on a back road in Richmond. We had a 1/4-mile driveway, just as our driveway. So the fact, and we lived there for 15 years, we maintained our driveway all 15 years on our own. So the fact of a lot of people have questioned us of, do we understand the money that goes into this? Do we understand the responsibility? Not that our character or financials are on trial here, but we do understand that.
Or
And again-
any of our business.
Well, again, that's why we're letting you in a little bit, because again, we know this isn't supposed to be personal. This is what the ordinances say, but we're just trying to express a little bit for you to help you understand. I mean, we lived there for 15 years and didn't have problems with this. We have the equipment to do it. I mean, we would still be in that home. We had a cell tower that was built by our neighbor in our backyard in Richmond. And that's the reason we were out of there. This is the reason we want this property, is because we came from 30 acres. Our kids just like to play. We don't like neighbors. I'll be honest. We just want wide open space. So that's what we're here for.
Sarah? Okay, this is a public hearing. We have someone here on Zoom that has a question, and certainly anyone who's here has that opportunity. Just raise your hand and we'll recognize you. We'll recognize this person now. Who do we have?
Hi, this is Tony Triano.
Go ahead.
I just had a question about the drainage that you were talking about, sort of, at the end of the driveway or maintenance to the road. How is that going to sort of route water? Are you going to go under Talbot Hill Road? You're going to go down the side of Talbot Hill Road? Because that runs right into East Shore Road. So I'm just curious as to what that drainage approach would look like.
We're gonna have a civil engineer study that and determine what the best route is.
Did you hear the answer to that question?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Thank you. Any follow-up questions from the person on Zoom?
None.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The public hearing is open. Is there anyone in attendance here tonight that would like to speak to the question? Please state your name for Sarah.
Barb Scully. I just wanted to add that, and I'm sure the board is aware of this, even though the applicant states that they've maintained their own road for 15 years or whatever, in the past, and that they know what they're getting into, that they will be able to do that. This doesn't mean, I mean, we don't always know what the future holds, and they might very well sell. And what happens to the next person down the line, and how well will they maintain that road? So this variance goes with that property, it doesn't go with the applicant. So just.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I think that's a fair point. I'll just add that current town ordinances, class 6 roads are not maintained by the town, period. End of story, anywhere in the town. So anyone that's built on a class 6 road, they take care of it or they don't. They either get to their house or they can't. That's the end of that.
We understand that even if the variance was passed, we would have to sign the waiver, knowing that we are responsible. The town has no legality to it. We understand that that's how it goes. We've seen it. Other people have had to do the same thing, and we understand that.
I just want you to be
Just,
clear.
if you could just state your name, excuse me, excuse me,
I watch
excuse me,
football.
just state your name.
Susan Armstrong, I'm at 125 East. Actually, the new address would be 127, but I'm presently moving at 125.
Okay, thank you.
People use that road. I walk my dogs up there, and so you would, it's not so secluded that people won't be using it. It'll still be a public way, even though you have to maintain the bottom part.
Yes.
Right. When we say secluded, we figure 61 acres, not on Talbot Hill. The whole property, our property would be 61 acres, so to us, that's secluded.
But it is used quite a bit.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else?
Sure. John Hilton, I live at 196 East Shore Road.
Mhm.
And I happened to look at this property about 15 years ago and had the option to buy it from Sosimo Builders. And I passed on it because of the town's restrictions that they wanted me to pave it. And they wanted it up 760 feet. and they wanted to have a turnaround of about, I believe, 70 feet in diameter for a fire truck. I had a lengthy meeting with Lee Dunham about it, and I at that point in time passed, because that portion of the project would have been about a $1.3 million expenditure 15 years ago. So I live at 196. I'm very concerned about the water flow, beyond concerned. And I don't support it in any way, shape, or names to allow an exception without it being paved. Because I truly believe that's the essence and the spirit of the ordinance, is that a class 5 maintained road paved, and it should be upheld because of the grade of that road. The road is really, when we looked at it, the grade is not permissible for a road. It's too steep. We had to have some blasting done to it in order to get it to that particular grade that needed to be for fire and egress and everything else. But I'm mostly concerned about the water flow.
Okay.
The water flow is enormous. And I have one of the town's drain pipes that goes underneath the road into my property, and I've had to add on to it. And at this point in time, I'm looking at another $10,000 project because part of the town's road ends up in my front yard every storm. So I'm having to put another drain in and figure out how to tackle that aspect down there. But, you know, we lost part of the road farther on down in front of my in-laws cottage at 212 East Shore Road this past winter. The water flow is enormous. And, you know, from my perspective, having lived there now on the lake for almost 30 years, and having lived in my existing house for 20 years, and seeing the flow, and seeing the amount of work that has to go into maintaining it, it's not my understanding that we have any town roads that are maintained by homeowners. I don't know if it's factual, but when I inquired,
No, we do.
we do have town roads that are maintained by homeowners.
All class 6 roads in town that are built on are maintained by the homeowners. They're not maintained at all by the town.
And how
Not even
many
allowed.
class 6 roads do we have in town?
We have 13.7 miles.
And how many homes would that be? Do we know?
No idea.
Do we know when this ordinance was put into the passage?
It was amended in 2008, but I don't know when it was originally passed.
The language adding the class 6 road portion was added in the 90s.
So if you take into consideration the ones from 1700 and 1800, it's way beyond that aspect. And I think there's far more that have been denied than have been accepted. And I would just look at it in terms of looking at the whole big picture. You have one house going at 61 acres and the impact. So let's just say 15 or 20 homes on East Shore Road with the water flow. As bad as it is now, this is going to get it done. That's my perspective. I'd love to see the water study. The gentleman who owns Fieldstone is a very close personal friend of mine, and I trust his results extensively. Known him for 20 years. He does all my work, whether it's in this state or out of state. But you know, I find it very hard to believe that we're going to start having people get variances for a project like this and then maintain it, when in fact the town really didn't budge 15 years ago, and how they want to budge now. I just don't find that in the spirit of the ordinance.
Respond in any way?
Yeah, can we?
Sure.
So we'll start kind of at the beginning from his comment that we've seen it in multiple places that the class 6 policy has been talked about for, is it 19 years?
3.
Okay, so since 2003, it's been talked about. We haven't come across it yet. It seems like it's talked about, but never actually created.
Mhm.
So as far as the paving goes, how we would want to see in a policy that really doesn't exist. But again, are there any other class 6 roads that are made to be paved? On the water, we just want to reiterate that that's hence why the engineering would happen. If it's bad now, it's only going to get worse if the variances get denied up there, because unless the town, I don't know how you go about it, but the town has to somehow talk to selectmen or somebody to actually work on a class 6 road, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, if they don't maintain it now, it's only going to get worse. Erosion's not going to erase itself, or you take the step forward, have all the proper studies done, and have it built up the right way. It kind of seems like you do nothing, it's going to get worse. You attempt to do something, it should get better.
Okay.
guess that's it for the comment.
Yes,
I'm Jeremy Hawkins Smith again. I represent Marianne and Ned, who's seated to my right. I'm attorney King. I took Mr. Hoden's comments to me 15 years ago. He got so close to developing this property that we were talking about drainage and paving and how long the road was going to be. So clearly there was an intention on this board or from the town to approve it back 15 years ago, but costs got out of control. If these people can do it to the town's satisfaction with current engineering and current money, why would what happened with Mr. Hoden 15 years ago, and I'm certainly not challenging what he's saying, have any bearing on today? If the town was willing to let Mr. Hoden develop it, I don't know why you treat these folks any differently. It's not a different property on top of the hill, it's the same property. The current New Hampshire Supreme Court decisions state that the spirit of the ordinance and the contrary to public interest factor must be construed together. Okay, in your decision, you were 5-0 on the public interest factor, that you denied the spirit of the ordinance. So internally, your vote was not consistent if you were reading the New Hampshire Supreme Court cases. To violate the spirit of the ordinance, the variance must, quote, unduly and in a marked degree conflict with the basic zoning objections of the ordinance. The court has recognized that all variances deviate from the terms of the ordinance in some degree. Small variances are not enough. There must be a significant and serious violation of the ordinance in order for you to find and deny the variance. What violates the spirit of the ordinance, the ZBA should examine whether the variance would alter the essential character of the locality or B, threaten public health, safety, or welfare. And I think that that's what you should be focusing on tonight. Those are the actual criteria that you need to focus on. I think, as the applicant said, analyzing the proposed use, a single-family residence on 61 acres, not looking to subdivide in the rural ag district with a minimum of 3 acres. This is right in line with what's supposed to be put there. It's exactly what the ordinance wanted in terms of proposed use. I visited the property this morning, and I'm glad I did. I didn't wait for the seat. The portion of East Shore Road where it intersects with Talbot Hill is dirt. It's dirt for quite a while. It was clear that recent work had been done to that road in terms of grading it and the drainage along the side. In 2 places, I saw cones and I saw it had been scooped out. Even with all that work, that road was not anything to brag about. It was rough today again. And it's very clear that there are bigger problems on that road than what could happen from Talbot Hill Road, quite frankly. It appears that there are multiple residents on private roads or long driveways. Every camp road I saw with more than one house on it, to the left toward the lake said private road on it. That's the neighborhood this is in. It appeared to me that the many offshoots of East Shore Road, none of them are paved. I know of one driveway slightly up the lake driveway that's over a 1/4 mile long. What is more difficult to get services to? That little short section of hill that comes down to Talbot Hill Road, or a 1/4 mile drive, private drive? And I don't, apples to apples here. It just doesn't seem to me that if you approve this, that it would be anything different than what's already out there in terms of dirt roads, private roads, difficulty for town to get there, whether or not they've been approved or not. And so I think it's not a stretch to say that this is certainly in keeping with what the existing neighborhood is. So I think then you have to shift to the town services argument. This property is very close to East Shore Road. You guys probably, I don't know if you parked on it and walked up to this property. We're not talking a large section of road. Your town vehicles, ambulances, everything can get to the intersection of Talbot Hill Road and South Shore. To get someone from that property past one small corner piece to the main road is not difficult. So I find it difficult to imagine that you would deny this based upon the fact that there's some kind of threat to public health, safety, or welfare. of putting this in. So then it turns to, why would the ZBA strictly enforce this regulation? Why would we say we have to have 225 feet of frontage here? And the Supreme Court has said that the purpose of the frontage requirement is to ensure that a dwelling may be reached by the fire department, police department, and other agencies charged with the responsibility of protecting the public peace, safety, and welfare. That's what I was saying. This anything that the town can do, it can get to that corner of Talbot Hill and South Shore Road. And it'd be their responsibility to get down 200 feet to that vehicle if the vehicle can't make it up that hill. That's not a long distance. It's not a great distance. There's no New Hampshire case law that upholds a total prohibition of building simply because a lot doesn't meet current frontage. That's Bernie Waugh, hard work. Everything I'm saying here, I have a citation to if you want to know it. The town can't deny it because it doesn't want any development on Class 6 roads. The Supreme Court has said that it cannot be a pretext to stymie development or a backdoor way of the town regulating and preventing development of Class 6 roads themselves. Okay, and if they do that, it's going to do what's called a taking, and unconstitutional taking, and the town's going to essentially have to buy the property from the client. There's no other use you can make it. It's been logged. It's not going to be a residence. It's worth zero. It's a recreational lot. Someone say 10, 15 grand for it, and they have lost a ton of money, and it will be on the town. As I read the minutes from your past vote, it seems some of you are just against Class 6 road development, period. And that's simply not the legal test. You do have to consider each case on its own merits and determine that. There is precedent. You can't ignore what you've done before. The doctrine called administrative loss. You are charged with applying the ordinance clause in a consistent manner and apply it to a similarly situated applicants over a period of years without legislative interference. And I'll get to it, but I think you do have a pattern here, at least a history going in 10 to 15 years of granting these types of requests. You can't change that policy on your own. It has to be a vote of the town. The ordinance needs to be changed if you're going to prohibit, as a blanket matter, development on Class 6 roads. I went through the Registry of Deeds. I was able to screen agreements that the town of Swansea made, and I picked up a bunch of them regarding Class 6 roads. We talked about Prescott. There's Bemis on Oliver Hill Road, Yahtzee, Stephen Cody. And this board, as you know, if it approves this, the town already has a significant 7-page agreement that it's going to make and sign as it did the Prescott. And this is an agreement that is going to say what standards they have to bring the road up to. They're going to release the town from any liability for bringing municipal vehicles or services there. It is going to cover any issues that you could possibly have about the liability and the effects of allowing this to go through on that 200 feet of road or whatever it is down that hill. To say that the town's not protected, that this hasn't been addressed before is I'm looking at this giant agreement, and the process is certainly in place for the town to do this. This was 2 years ago that the town entered this agreement with the press. This wasn't 20 years. I'll ask you to review the Frank Day, Nicholas Karen decision the ZBA made in 2006. That was a 5-0 vote. That the variance on in the same district on a Class 6 road was consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. And the written decision of the board says that such development, quote, advances the growth of the Swansea community in a positive way. Okay, that was the board's policy in 2009. And nothing, the Prescott decision echoes that. And for you to say now, no, we didn't mean that, or things have changed. There's been no change to the ordinance that would justify the board reversing its course on these decisions. There was also the Angela and Jason Blake case, a 2003 case, same thing, similar. And again, the Prescott case, you were 5-0 on the spirit of the ordinance being met on the same road in a different location. Absent some physically significant characteristic of this property that makes it different than the other properties that you granted variances on a class 6 road, you can't simply say that these people aren't entitled to a variance. You have to be consistent with what you've done in the past, and I don't think you are being, given the procedures in place, these past decisions that we're reading. I think this also illustrates that these come up and are approved and go to building every 3 to 5 years. And I think that I'm going to hear an argument that we'll open the gate to development on class 6 roads if we approve this, we'll set precedent the wrong way. Again, the sheer number that you've actually have gone to development in the last 10 years doesn't support that. There's not going to be a flood of class 6 road applicants. They're just not borne out by the evidence of the registry of deeds. The last thing I would say is that the taking issue, I didn't have a chance, to be honest with you, to look at the Chester County Registry of Deeds records. They were down all weekend. They were down today. I don't know what they're doing. But my suspicion is this lot's pretty old. I mean, I think this is probably been a logging lot for a long time. And the answer to an earlier question, your ordinance was enacted in September of 47. And then you said that the class 6 road only came into being in the 90s. Well, if this thing had access and it was a legally buildable lot back then, you can't impose the new regs on it now. There's grandfathered rights to develop this lot, in my view, and that's confirmed in your ordinance. I think you've got to give this the proper consideration and be practical about this. This is no different than what's up there already on that road. It's a dirt road in bad condition with many dirt roads, private roads not maintained by the town, spidering off of it. And there's simply no way to distinguish this particular property from the others in the neighborhood or the ones that you granted variances to in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Any other members of the public looking to weigh in? What's that? No, thank you. No one else on Zoom link. Any other comments before I close the public hearing at this point from the applicants? No. Again, one chance for folks out here in Zoom and in person, or board members. Hearing none, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. My understanding that we're only, we decided that we were only looking at the spirit of the ordinance criteria. Anyone have any comments or questions or anything at what before we move on to that?
No, it's about number 2. My perception and the research that I did on class 6 roads, I read a lot about it's more of a safety issue of not allowing building, because I can see the class 6 road, halfway up that class 6 road on Talbot Hill, somebody decided they wanted to build a house and the fire department couldn't get up there. But in my conversations with Mike Jasmine and then some of the documents that I've seen, I feel confident that the homeowner is going to be made to bring that up to a class 5 standard. So I feel comfortable as far as the safety aspect of building on a class 6 road in that.
Okay.
I'd just like to comment on some of the, offer an opinion on some of the comments that were made. I think water is a valid issue, but that's a dirt road. It's pouring water down on, has for centuries, and it's going to keep pouring it. So, I mean, building a house isn't going to stop it. But that said, since it's a matter of public record, that somebody was told 15 years ago that they had to pave it, I wanted to make sure we went on record and said the zoning board doesn't have that authority to make someone pave a road. And I challenged that anybody in town has any authority to force a homeowner to pave a class 6 road for any reason. So that's just my questions on that.
Okay. Anything, Adam?
I would agree with both you guys in terms of the safety aspect. I mean, that's really the consideration here. I think in terms of a class 6 road is if there is a situation, not just for the homeowner, but, you know, in terms of activities that would occur on a property that would not have occurred if there was no home there to begin with. Someone has a campfire, someone has something happens, all of a sudden you got fire back there. It's not at the home, but it's created in the woods that can't be reached. And that wouldn't have occurred had there not been, you know, the activity in the home to begin with. Not saying that's going to occur, but I think that's really the spirit here in terms of why the town had decided so many moons ago, depending on what we say, 40s, 90s, 1772, I think I heard.
18.
But I think that's really the consideration, is the safety factor. But in terms of water, doing absolutely nothing to the property is what's happening now.
Right.
I can't imagine that having somebody who is, you know, authorized and understands civil engineering can't come up with some better plan than nothing. So,
I mean,
that's
in
my
my
2 cents.
opinion, water's always run downhill unless some engineer has decided it doesn't. And this is downhill.
And so, you know, my biggest concern is not necessarily the water. I mean, it is a concern for the property, but I don't think that, you know, in terms of what the applicant has said, that trying to come to some, solution to that is a positive step. But, you know, my biggest concern really is just on the ability to get equipment and services at the location. That's it. That's my 2 cents.
You know, I think the homeowner said something 3 different times that I counted. I think it's germane. I just wanted to put it here. It is germane to us to consider precedent that has been set. We're a judicial board, and there's no court anywhere in the United States that the first thing they do when hearing a case is look at case law. And that's history, it's precedent. And we've said it, we looked at it, going back, it's improper for us to do that. And I don't think the townspeople said, don't build on class 6 roads. That's not what they said. That's not even what the ordinance says. I mean, first of all, for them to try to get that passed, it end up in the Supreme Court anyway. What they said is you can't build on a class 6 road without a variance. Well, that's the whole purpose we're here. That's the only purpose of the zoning board.
Anything else? We can go to the question. Everyone comfortable going to the question? Okay. So we're only dealing with number 2, granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance, whether we agree with that or not. I will ask Brian.
Yes.
You believe that granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance?
Based on the fact that the ordinance says no building on class 6 road without a variance. They came to us for a variance on a road that we've already permitted a variance.
Okay. Adam? Spirit of the ordinance?
You know, again, I think the spirit of ordinance, I think is actually defined a few times in various ways, you know, and the overwhelming sentiment is health, safety, and welfare of the public as well as the potential, you know, owner of the property. And I think safety is a concern on this, being able to get, you know, services over there. But I would say that the way the road is currently, it's extremely steep. I mean, I was there, I mean, we're going up obviously in torrential downpour, but even in a dry day, that's a steep road on a steep driveway, extremely steep driveway. But that in itself is not a qualification how steep your driveway is, you know, in terms of the property. You live in New Hampshire, nothing's flat anywhere here. But I think in terms of the, you know, the road work and maintenance of that, and I think it's been discussed. It's been new evidence has been positioned, you know, in front of this that we didn't have before, I think. So as a result of that, I would say that the spirit of the ordinance could indeed be observed. So yes,
The spirit of the ordinance would be observed
yes.
if this is granted. Ann?
Well, I struggle with that because I don't, I obviously had said no the first time.
Mhm.
And I think the town has written it to not build on class 6 roads for a lot of reasons.
Mhm.
And despite the new evidence that we've been given, I'm still no, I don't think that. I don't think that it would.
Okay. Doesn't know. Wayne?
I would say yes, based on, they're not gonna be able to build up there unless they meet the engineering criteria that's gonna be put before them to build that road up to a class 5 road. So I feel comfortable that the grade will be addressed, the water will be addressed, and I'm good with it. So yes, I agree.
I'm gonna vote no, as I did before. I think the ordinance was put in that we allow development on class 5 roads that are maintained by the town. We don't have that here, regardless of what it wouldn't be a town maintained road, it would be a driveway of some sort. So I would say no, it doesn't. Granting this variance would not observe the spirit of the ordinance. Right now, we have 3 votes that granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance, and we have 2 that's no. Entertain a motion here.
Make the motion that we grant the variance in this case.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks. So it's been moved and seconded that granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance as it's been presented. Anyone have any questions on that? Okay, all those in favor of the ordinance, please, Phil, in favor of the application, the variance application, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. It's a 3-2 vote. That granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. This is subject to a motion for rehearing, or once we get the one right, it can be challenged. It says a 30-day appeal period in it, just so you know that. Much like you exercise that same 30-day appeal, is still the same one. And I will keep in touch with Sarah, and I'm sure she'll keep in touch with you as this, if anything happens, certainly within the next 30 days. But yeah, anyone that wants to challenge this themselves, as you did, you challenged the vote. So that's it. At this point, we do have another case before us tonight. So, well.
That case of the attorney father-in-law, he lives on
Oh, really?
here in town, and he maintains it. Done a lot of work over the last 30 years.
You'd have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can happen. All right.
Link to LNG propane. It's a class 6 road, we'll make them pave it, maintain it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, ZBA number 22-007, a special exception.
Let's talk beer.
What's that?
Let's talk.
I know. A public hearing.
I hope this is going to be more fun.
Anytime there's beer involved, it tends to be more fun. Michael Guitard of Frog Brewing requests a special exception pursuant to section 5, article B2A of the zoning ordinance to establish a manufacturing use, which is a brewery, on property shown at tax map 56 lot 3 on Sawyer's Crossing Road. This subject property is located in the business district. We will again see Wayne for Phil Hutwelker. I'll ask Sarah to kind of give us a little recap. We do have to write up in there as well, and then we'll let the applicant kind of tell us what they're looking to do.
The only thing I will add to your introduction is
Yeah.
that this will be subject to site plan review, so the planning board will be combing over the placement of the proposed building and the parking, the landscaping, the lighting, all of that. I believe the applicant has applied for shoreline permit and it meets all of the other criteria for ZBA. You know, it falls within the proper setbacks and everything else,
Yeah, so this is just a special exception to allow
just for use.
for use in a business zone.
Mhm.
But it's a manufacturing use, which is only allowed by special exception.
Precisely.
Business zone, okay.
So I have a question on that, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Is it really manufacturing or is it retail services, which is permitted without special exception? Because I can't imagine. it's
Retail
brewing.
services is permitted, but the West LA Beer Company also received a special exception for brewing, because the applicant is here. When the public hearing opens, you
Mhm.
can ask him about that, but it's a manufacturing use on the site that needs the special exception.
Okay, all right.
All right. We'll open a public hearing relative to this, and maybe you can kind of give us a sense of what you're trying to do. We've got a whole bunch of information in here that you provided.
Yeah, well, we're, the plan is to build a brewery on the site and brew our beer there. And we only, we brew on the site in Marlboro, and we would brew the beer there and sell it out of that location.
Here, the Swansea location. Not taking anything away from Marlboro, are we? I mean,
Yes.
you're closing down that production facility?
You get to have a brewery.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Did you bring any beer?
I didn't bring any beer.
Good.
I saw my fridge, but I can if you want.
I just wondering, because I'm thirsty.
I have a question for Sarah. So they could open a restaurant there without a special exception,
Correct.
but because they're going to brew or manufacture beer there, they have to come before us.
Correct.
What's the difference? Because you could make sauerkraut and it's basically beer.
I don't understand the difference, to be honest.
You should make sauerkraut.
Well, I could see that.
Well, that's why I was asking the question, because I didn't
It's,
understand why
you're
they were.
cooking, it's cooking. It's, I mean, I just wondering why they're,
believe
I understand they
when
need
I first spoke with Matt,
right.
Yeah.
he said, this is what we needed to do.
Is it because
Because,
it's alcohol or?
I think it's because we're actually producing the beer on site.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well, selling it
Down
there
back,
too, right?
Partic-
Yes,
So it's a retail location.
well,
yes,
yeah.
yes, I mean, it is, yeah.
I mean, a restaurant, I mean, by the definition they're giving him, they're manufacturing food in the back, so. they
Right,
gotta-
that's what I'm saying, is I don't know why.
I don't agree with it being here for this purpose.
I don't even,
Hmm.
I'm ready to vote, I'm ready to vote.
I mean, I'm just saying, if a restaurant, if you go to a restaurant and you're buying a plate of food, they're manufacturing the food. You go to a bar and they brew the beer in the back
The
room.
only concern I have is and I haven't brewed a whole lot of beer, but is any of the waste that it produces, is that all recycled?
The spent grain that we have.
It just
a
give that to a farmer?
Comes and takes
So it's all sustainable.
it, yes.
Yeah.
And they bring in raw material in the back and
Right,
they make it into a finished good, just like a restaurant. They bring in raw
it's
materials.
a restaurant.
I don't understand.
I'm
it.
sorry.
That's okay. That's
No, I
that's
just.
why we're here.
One of the topics that we're
Yeah,
gonna
Barbara has a
discuss is whether
question.
we're in charge
No
for this.
comment.
And
I've
because it's
interrupted you
cost
twice,
money.
Barbara.
Just, yeah.
Oh,
We'll get Barbara in a second. Go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, I disagree with you, Brian, that there is a difference between a restaurant processing food and someone creating a product, which is manufacturing, in my opinion. They're
Okay.
taking and creating a new product. They're not taking and altering the food and, just cooking it. I mean, they're actually creating something new, just like if you were creating something from a bunch of metal and you came out with a new product. This is, they're creating
Tomatoes and
something.
ketchup.
I mean, I make sauerkraut and kimchi, that's legit.
But
Well, also retailing it,
Well, let's.
I do have one other question, and whether or not the intensity of use is an issue for a ZBA under granting a special exception. You know, I'm thinking about the amount of impervious surface, I mean, beyond the 125, that area that's proposed to be developed is pretty intensely developed between the parking lot, the buildings, and the septic. I mean, there is still the fluid that's going to be in your, I mean, you have the septic, but you also have a
And then
separate.
the waste fluid from the growing process goes into right now, and will, in the same process, goes into a clear tank. And we let the solids dissipate out of it and collect them again. And we filter everything that we pump into our waste tank. And so at that point, when the water meets a certain pH level, is when we release it into the on-site septic.
And the farmer gets all the yummy stuff.
The farmer gets all the good stuff.
Yummy stuff.
So I'm just, again, thinking about it because this particular lot is on the river.
Right.
So, you know, whether or not you can take that into account, I'm not sure if that's in your jurisdiction or not.
Is this across the street from the old Humane Society?
Yes, across from
the
Route
tanks.
10,
Yeah, okay.
from the old Humane, but also across from Rhines.
Right.
where
Tank, the big
Rhines
tank
is,
farm.
the propane.
Oh, yeah, okay, now I
And
get
this
it.
Swansea
is
Factory
across, so
Road.
it's crossing, so it's crossing the river.
So it's.
Okay, yeah, perfect, thanks.
And it's right.
I'm trying to
next-
orient
Oh,
it.
so all the campers can get in their canoes and come up.
They have to canoe
Come across the river, right?
Yeah, they canoe across the river, but then
to answer your, if I could, Mr. Chairman, answer a question in terms of the criteria for the special exception before. And the first proposed use is similar to the one, that is, use is already authorized in the district and is appropriate location for such use. That's the first. Second is such approval will not reduce the value of any property within the district or otherwise be interest, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood. And three, there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to the vehicle for pedestrians. And for adequate and appropriate facilities be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use. So that's the criteria that we.
so what's appropriate? I mean, you know, your second thing you mentioned is that is an appropriate location.
Yeah, so this fourth would be adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use. I'm sorry, we had an interesting machine in the background.
Maybe a little nervous as to what's
Yeah.
going on.
So those are the criteria, and it just, you know, you asked the question, like, what do we view this through, what lens, these are the lenses.
So whether or not, you know, the intensity of the use, you know, of the land is
Yeah.
part of whether it's an appropriate facility, you know,
An appropriate location for such a use.
Are you going down the road of traffic, Barbara, and things like that?
no, that, you know, no, I'm just thinking about, the amount of impervious surface and the fact that you're going to have a lot of waste in terms of effluent. And I know that, you know, and this will have to go before shoreland, and, you know, that.
Right.
And I know that your variance would be granted with, I'm assuming, you know, the proper permits, be received, so.
So I'm not applying for a variance.
Right, this is just.
I mean,
Just the
excuse me,
special
special exception, sorry, my slip. You know, so.
I believe this is the business district.
Yes, it is, but I'm talking about the intensity of, can you tell me what percentage of the property will be impervious? And again, it's a special kind of property because it is right on the river, and it is, you know, shoreline protection zone. So, yeah, I know that your development's going
We
to
don't
be
think,
outside of.
I don't, yeah,
125.
and I don't think on any impervious. We're not gonna pay it.
But you also have a bill.
Get a building.
Yeah, and you're not gonna pay your parking lot,
No,
but it's considered, because hard gravel is considered impervious, so when you go for your shoreline, that they'll be considering that.
right, there's a
impervious.
fabric that you use and you can use.
Well, just that nothing's gonna percolate through because it has to be compacted enough that, you know, it acts more like there's more runoff than there is.
From what I was told from our septic designer, our brewing process that we currently use, and we're gonna use the same equipment that we have now, we're gonna bring to this location. It's less impact than a single family home.
Really,
Yes,
and that's your effluent you're talking about.
yes, because we filter the effluent, when we pump out of the tanks into the storage tank, and then we let it suspend, and it's a cone tank, so the sediment comes down. So what really the water that's going back into the what will be our new field is the pH level is back to a acceptable amount.
And your drawing had 2 tanks on it. if I'm correct. Do you guys have a plan?
That's a replacement field,
Yeah, what's that?
and something when you do a shoreline protection application, they want you to have enough space to have a replacement field in case you had to replace the original one.
Right.
Oh,
Case of failure.
potential, so it's a potential.
Enough land usable to do a replacement field.
So your waste from the toilets and the sinks and whatever is the same tank that will be from your beer making
There'll be
process?
2 stage.
But all of that goes
One
through
tank
this-
is gonna service the brewery end of it, and then it'll flow to the tank that services the bathroom area.
So it goes before that, and then it goes into the same leach field.
Yep.
Adam, did you have something? No? I'll get answered. Other questions of the board?
There were
Oh,
questions
sure.
online. but
Yes.
They really are more directed towards planning board.
Okay, thank you. Do they know that?
Yes, I responded to.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Any other questions for the board, from board members on this special exception application?
Well, the system doesn't go down that far, right?
Oh, no. No, yeah, not even close, I don't think. Anything else to add before we close the public hearing and we deliberate a little bit here and make a decision? Okay, Barbara? Board members? The questions of the applicant? I have a question. How much beer do you produce here?
We're
Say in any given amount of time?
In the 3.5 years we've been in business, each year we've grown about 20%, so we're at about 125 barrels a year at 93 gallons a barrel roughly,
Okay,
so it's small scale. We might double that at this size location.
okay. Are you preparing this for shipment at this place as well? Are you boxing?
We
things
sell
up?
cans to go, but we don't distribute.
You
You
don't-
can't sell distribute in the state of New Hampshire. Our business profile is out of the tap room.
Okay, so pretty much
You
What-
can get cans to go, but we don't.
growlers or things like that? or what?
We're cans only. Right, growlers is an old school thing now.
Okay, nobody would.
Everybody's going to cans.
I like glass. So in essence, what you're saying is that everything you produce here will be consumed or at least on site. There's really not a lot of
Yes.
there's a retail element in that you have a tasting room and that kind of a thing, but it's not retail in that.
And cans to go, I mean. people
Yep.
come and-
But you're not selling cans to Market Basket to sell. Okay.
So I guess the push is really on to see if we can consume more alcohol in Swansea than Marlboro.
I guess the point is market study doesn't say that we drink more here.
So.
All right, any other questions of the applicant? That's all good. Barbara already said she's good. Anything more you want to add before I close the public hearing?
I will say that when they shot the grade, the river is 70 feet below. Believe it or not,
Really?
yes,
So you won't get a lot of voters.
well, it's pretty steep.
It's a pretty steep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, because of the times I've been through there.
People do crazy things with you.
Yeah, they're gonna build their own staircase up there, you see.
Stairway to beer, heaven.
There's gonna be a rope pole from one of the old ski resorts down there.
It might work.
Theoretically, that road is for fire access. That road, that's right adjacent to that.
Right down to the river.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's quite a drop
yeah,
for them to pump water.
yeah. Yeah, remember that? There was an old fire road down through there. I mean, they don't use it anymore, but,
Yeah,
No, they just put that in. That's new. I mean,
well, they redid it.
relatively.
Right.
You know. In my time, so it's new.
All right. All right, anything else? Close the public hearing. Any comments or questions or clarifications before we go to the questions?
West LA Beer Company approved, where is it? Can you give me I see 647 West
It's
One.
down,
It's on Route 10.
it's on Route 10 near Cutler School. Well, not quite near Cutler School, but you know where the Marlowe's.
Yeah, so where California Street is.
Right, if California Street comes out,
Okay, right on the
it's right
corner.
it's right across the street. It's on the
Yeah.
what would be the
Okay.
west side.
Okay.
They have live music in the
Swansea
summer.
Auto Sales.
Yeah, that's
I think it's the name of
I've
the
never been.
business that's
And
next
there's a
to
bar.
it.
Okay, I know where
And a
you're.
bar.
Oh, where the old
Yeah, the
convenience
Barbara
store used to be there.
Yes, Mr.
Oh,
Pease.
okay.
I've got a bunch of growlers in my cellar. I guess I could, they can't use her anymore, right?
We'll fill them, we just don't have our own growlers and.
All right. Ready to, any other questions before we go to the questions? All right. One. Do we agree or disagree that the proposed use is similar to one or more of the uses already authorized in the district and is in an appropriate location for such a use? Adam?
It's in the business district. It's an approved use. There is a additional brewery not that far down the road that is almost identical in its nature. And you could argue that their business model is very similar to a restaurant in terms of people coming in and out. So on all those things, yes.
Okay. Ann?
Yes,
Wayne?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes, to 5B2A, but I agree with the vice chair that there may still be some question in my mind as to whether it would be authorized under section 1. But here we are.
Okay, I'll agree that the proposed use is similar to one or more of the uses in the area already authorized in the district and that it is an appropriate location for such a use. Second question, do we agree that such approval would not reduce the value of any property within the district, nor otherwise be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood? And
yeah, I would say it would not reduce the value of the property. As far as injurious, I mean, you're in the shoreland protection zone. I can't talk to them, right?
right,
So, I'm
Talk to
sorry.
Sarah.
So the only thing this will be going to the planning board and they'll put in the proper, to make sure that any runoff that is taken care of. So, yeah, I'm a yes.
Okay. Wayne?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Adam?
I think there's no evidence to the contrary as it relates to property values.
Thank you.
But alcohol use is inherently dangerous. There's dangers that can occur in people consuming alcohol on premise. But I don't think that it's any different than if managed correctly
Mhm.
and legally than many restaurants that face the same issue. So for that reason, I say yes.
Yeah, and I'd be a little more concerned if it was, we're talking about a residential district or something like that. This is a business district. There are homes close by, but not that many. So I think the neighborhood will be, I don't think this would be injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to the neighborhood.
Not to the LP tanks across the street anyway.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Do we agree that there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians? Brian?
Well, given what Adam just said, thanks.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I agree, there won't be. I mean, there's no evidence showing that there would be.
Okay. Adam?
I think, again, legal and responsible management of those that are consuming alcohol on premise is the most important aspect of this. But outside of that, I don't think it's creates any additional hazards to vehicles or pedestrians that other uses would not be completely similar to. So yes.
Thank you. And Wayne?
Agreed, there won't be any nuisance or serious hazard.
And I concur. Lastly, do we agree that adequate and
You didn't
appropriate?
get in.
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry. Ian.
yes.
Yes. Jesus.
I got your bad hand.
Thank you, guys. Everybody for keeping an eye on me.
Can't do gangs, I'm sorry.
Do we agree that adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use? Wayne?
Yes,
Brian?
based on what's presented to us in the evidence file, yes.
Adam?
I would agree with Brian in terms of what's being presented to us and what our purview is. There's many more steps we have to take
Sure.
and fulfill. So yes.
Yes,
Ann? Yes.
yes.
I concur. Pretty much we're in the affirmative, on all of these. Entertain a motion.
Make a motion to grant the special exception.
Thanks, Wayne.
I'll
Is there-
second that.
Thanks, Adam. It's been Wayne. It's been moved and seconded to,
Been Wayne and Adam.
it's right, Wayne and Adam, to grant a special exception for this use in this property. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Welcome to the neighborhood.
Fourth and Road.
Thank
Yeah,
you very much.
One step closer.
one step closer.
This was more.
ZBA IPA.
Just
on
a
that.
few.
But not get there.
ZBA,
Don't worry, this is Swansea, you'll be through the process in about 2.5 years.
Yeah, it tastes good.
Yeah.
It might not taste good and it takes forever to drink it if it's a ZBA process. So,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
All
Like
right,
your input. I appreciate it.
right.
Uh,
One more thing to talk about. I believe Sarah will probably help us with this discussion of adopting fees for ZBA applications.
Yeah, so basically, we don't have them here, and other towns do have them, and it takes a lot of time to process ZBA applications, and you guys are allowed to have fees associated with your applications. So I'm recommending you implement them.
Are you saying we don't have any?
We don't have any.
So what you have right now is applicants pay the fee for the legal posting in the Sentinel, and they pay the fee for the certified mailing, but they
To the
don't.
abutters.
Yeah, to the abutters. But they don't pay an application fee.
Wow,
All the legwork, put all that stuff together.
wow,
Exactly.
All these packets,
I'm shocked.
Exactly.
and we're not even breaking even.
It's
Especially
not
with
even
all the
paying for the
time,
paper.
you coming in here, this room's what, $35 or $40 or something? If it's
Well,
rent to the
right.
public.
Yeah.
And we're here for hours.
And we're not paying her salary,
Can
which
we-
is $100 an hour.
Can we charge the selectmen if they're sending cases to us that we don't have purview for?
I'm not sure about that. I have no response.
We need them to,
Penalty fee.
the penalty fee for other,
So these fees are all over the place.
Exactly.
So what are you recommending?
They're all over the place, which is why I'm recommending a $50 fee, because they will still be paying for the certified mailing and the legal posting in the Sentinel. And the reason I'm choosing 50 is because they are all over the place. And yes, Ann?
I'm sorry, I apologize. How much time does it take you to make each of these packets? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Well,
8
Wait,
people.
It's beyond that.
the actual printing of the packet doesn't take that much time. The compiling of all of the information in the packets varies dramatically based on
How many?
the nature of the applications.
Okay, so that would be what I would be looking at is the paper itself. So you got 8 packets. I don't know how much this is. Is this 25 sheets?
Probably.
Yeah, this has been a poplar, this one over here. I got oak.
You know what I'm talking
I know.
about.
So why wouldn't we
So-
go to $100?
We want to go, so what we should do, and look at the cost of these others, but at minimum, we want to try to get it to cover the production of this stuff. At minimum, which I think is,
I
More than
would hope that
50.
went into your proposal.
I did not
Good idea.
consider
Let's go.
the cost of the paper in the proposal, and I chose to not factor how many hours per application I spend because it varies
well, I'm
enormously.
just looking up, what I don't want to do, if we're going to do it, I want to pick a good number the first time that meets our needs and not double it next year.
I
because it
wanted to
wasn't
keep
adequate.
it affordable and somewhat in line with the other towns in the area, and somewhat in line with fees that are charged for other applications in Swansea. And that's what the listing in the memo is showing.
Okay, I apologize. So how much do similarly sized towns charge?
I don't think you can go there.
Can't go by that,
Whereas it's all over the place.
right?
Yeah, because some of the communities roll the fee for the legal posting into their application fee.
Oh, yeah, because you gotta pay for do we pay for the Zoom still? We're paying for the licenses for the Zoom?
That's for
The whole
everything in
town.
town,
Yeah, it's the
yeah,
whole town, not just the ZBA.
I'm not looking to make any money, I just want to.
correct. This is not a profit venture.
Right, we just want to break even.
The planning board's charging $250 for a site plan. And you're
And,
proposing $50 for a zoning board.
Okay.
Site plan review is a little bit more complicated and it goes up from there. That's up to some number of square feet of the facility. I can't remember. I think it's the first 5,000 square feet is 250 and then it,
Plus, that's what the plus means.
yeah.
Wow,
I gotta be honest, my knee-jerk reaction is I don't like any of this in terms of fees. I mean, I think these are Swansea citizens, they pay their taxes to be here. These aren't random people coming in from other towns necessarily.
oh.
And
good
they're
point.
trying to find relief for, variances that were voted. And, I just think these numbers, unless they solve a specific problem that we have that we're not being able to fund, that's just my opinion, it just goes against my grain. I'm here as a volunteer. I'm not getting paid anything, neither is anybody else.
I would just comment that both of the applications tonight were not from Swansea residents.
But they plan to be.
True, they plan to be.
Yeah, if they get their approval.
Trying to think of the past. And there are a high percentage of people that are Swansea residents that do apply.
Yeah.
And
And
I agree with the fee. I mean, we just did a project in Keene and you have more insight than any of us at this table, but I mean, the Keene process was painful and expensive and painful and expensive.
so
Again,
50
It's like
bucks
these
is
towns say,
dinner.
we want development, we want you to come in, but by the way, we really don't. We really don't want you here because we make it
That's
so
the way they
difficult
act.
for you to do anything here. But just send us your money.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I mean, from an arbitrary point of view, if there's just people coming in here who just for fun on a Monday night want to go hang out, and harass us, but I don't see that. I've been here for a number of years. I think everyone's here pretty much has a legitimate reason to be here for one reason or another. Is it a problem? Are we tapped on funds here?
like too many people
Sure
applying
we
because
are.
it's free.
Yeah,
I
don't know.
I sort of fall on your camp
That's-
too, that, this, they're asking for, they're here because they're asking for either some kind of relief, either through a special exception or a variance, and I do know it does take time.
It
And effort,
does.
it does take time, but when.
It shouldn't cost the town either, you
It
know?
shouldn't cost a ton.
But you know, we already have, we have a planner on staff, we have Michael, they're already there. Whether we add a fee here or not, that's not gonna change. I'm sort of, yeah, I'm on the
I would
fence.
dare say the vast majority of the townspeople don't come in front of us because they know 80-20 rule. They're gonna be told no to what they want to do.
It's also a dark place, they don't know what it is, you know, what is a special exception? Why is a variance so difficult to get? It
We're
should be,
doing so well.
oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
$100 to become $1,000 to become.
But I mean, so then you gotta go, I mean, does it really cost the town?
Snacks. They have
Well, she's
different
got a salary, right, but it's like saying that it costs Joe and his department at the Public Works, it costs us so much money to do a section of road. Well, really, they're on payroll anyway, we already own the trucks anyway, you're already paying the insurance anyway. Does it really cost them, or we just?
Well, so
blowing smoke up
we're
someone's
using
skirt?
this room for 3 hours when we could be renting it out at $45, right?
I'm not sure the rental fee.
I think,
I don't
I'm
know
just
either.
saying, I know they rent this room out.
Yeah.
So we're using a resource of the town, you know. I don't see that it's onerous. I think a little bit to help.
A little bit of a fee.
Yeah, I agree. My short time here, the people that have come in, I don't think they'd wink at a $50 fee because
Yes, go on.
a lot of the work they're doing is substantially more than that.
Oh,
I agree with you also, but they're hiring people to get their ducks in a row so that we can see their ducks in a row
Yeah.
and we can let them through the gate.
I've been on the board, I think this is year 18. And this is
Really?
the first time I've heard that we don't charge. I was shocked when you said we don't charge.
So you thought we did charge?
Absolutely, because every single thing you do in town, we charge for, except the zoning board. I'm blown away.
Well, there you go. At 18 years times, say 2-3 applications per month. Think of all the money.
I think I'm just still pissed off when I filled up my tank today at $90. And I just think of all the people out there who's just, you know, it's just,
$12.50.
yeah. it's
Fill my motorcycle. I've never paid $12.50. Fill mine.
No, that's-
Outrage.
So at any rate,
I'm comfortable.
where would the money go?
General fund.
Just general fund? Is that
We go to this, if we can legit say it's
We
to
were talking
defray
about
our
that.
costs.
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I give the checks to Kevin, the tax collector, and they process it. I don't know if it goes into a
Well, this paper,
ZBA bucket. I can find that out before you guys make a decision.
I'm just curious. I mean, I'm
They need
assuming it would
money.
go to the general fund, right?
so eventually we give this paper back to you because the recycling center makes bank off of this stuff.
Well, I usually try to get it back to the town to recycle.
This is-
They have to track it out because it's in the town report.
Yeah. I just never looked at it in terms of
sorry.
from this perspective.
I can see both sides of it.
Yeah, I can too.
Yeah,
I would move that we vote.
The only curiosity, I mean, I think you should be charging 50 seems reasonable to me.
it's less than,
As
a
whatever.
little less than anybody else.
I mean, other towns our size are charging $150.
See, we're just going. I think, okay, I'd be all right with 50.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say I'd be a little butthurt if we found out it was going to other departments in the town that aren't managing their budgets well. I mean,
Just
I
had to
would be,
register my cars.
I would be more than upset.
Just-
You did?
Yep. Do we have a second?
What was your motion?
My motion is that we vote to charge $50 per applicant.
More than that, though.
I thought we just said 50.
Well, it's 50 plus the notice.
I think if you would adopt Sarah's proposal,
Okay, good job.
then I'll second it.
I'll second yours because you
No,
did a
no,
better
go
job.
ahead.
Seconded each other.
Okay. So Sarah, just so we're clear, it's $50 plus the posting?
Plus
And the butters.
a butter and a butter notice.
Okay.
So
I think that-
basically, your
Let me look
proposal,
at it again to make sure I'm reading right. Oh, and changing the abutter fee to $10 in a butter so that I can just tell people what their fee is going to
Yes.
be, because that's contingent on certified mail rates, which just creep up and up and up.
Fluctuate, so
Right.
just $10
Gonna go up again.
per butter.
I'll hand deliver those for you.
And we could revisit the abutter fee when necessary.
Okay.
Is it appropriate, stupid question? Put in some kind of contingent that the butters fee is fungible based on the US government's postal. rules?
No, I think what she wants to say is she wants to make it $10 per butter.
Right. What I'm saying is,
Yeah.
if, let's say that certified thing goes up to $12 next year, does she have to come back to us and say, you want to increase to 12, or can we just make that a fungible number?
I like
$10 plus whatever
The
the,
cost of, the actual cost of a butter
Yeah.
notifications.
Yeah,
It would probably be wise to review this every year, make sure those, I'm sure you'll keep an eye on it, make sure that those
Yeah, maybe it
costs
makes
don't change.
the most sense to just review it every year to see if it made sense.
yeah,
sure, let's
I
do
think
that.
it's most
So
obvious
you-
to people, you know, in terms of what their costs are gonna be, not the gas.
And are people complaining about having?
When will this go with
You
that?
know,
That's a good question. Probably,
You should back it at 15 years.
yeah, that's what it takes 15
No,
years.
no, wait, do 10, just do 10, because I think I might have.
Yeah. In,
It would probably go into effect for the applications that come in for the July meeting.
Yeah, I was gonna say July 1st sounds like a good time frame.
okay,
Unless you don't, unless you think September, you think it'll take more time to get people used to it?
I don't think there's really so much getting used to it.
Okay,
I'll just update
That's what it
the
is.
applications. Actually, we won't put a date on it because I'll update the applications and I'll bring the applications in here for your approval.
okay,
And then
all right.
fair enough.
we'll start it once you approve the applications, because they need to be reprinted.
So we have a motion to add a $50 fee to the zoning action that that we withhold final approval until we see the,
Right.
withhold it until we see the, so.
And then
with
the
the,
rest
with the
of the board.
contingency of annual reviews.
mhm. Do we do something now, or do we do we actually take a formal action when we see?
I think we should vote so that she can change the wording and then the whole board will approve it at the next meeting.
The next meeting?
That sound good?
We have a motion and second on that. All those in favor of that motion,
Aye.
please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? So subject to final approval, but go with the concept.
Look, rabbit.
My daughter's birthday is tomorrow and she's announced that she's taken a full-time position at the hospital she's staying at. She's been travel nursing for 2 years, all around the country, in COVID wards, in various places. And she's moving out of state. And I'm crushed.
Where?
North Carolina.
When you guys moving?
I'm not moving.
No,
She's moving.
I know that. I
Guess
figured
who
you would
gets to-
move. with her.
Guess who gets to pack up and clear out her apartment? It's terrible.
Sure.
She'll be 28 tomorrow.
Happy early birthday.
My daughter will be 30 on June 9th, and I will be attending her birthday party where she lives in Galway, Ireland.
Oh,
So it'll be-
cool.
Yeah, like a little bit more of a trip.
If she's stuck in there, I would freak out. I mean, as it is,
Oh.
I'm about going out.
What is she doing in Ireland?
And my husband's like, he's like, well, you can move to North Carolina. That's okay with me. Your job's 100% remote. Go do whatever you want.
Oh, yes, we, motion to adjourn,
Don't move.
second?
Second, third.
Third,
Fourth.
say aye.
Okay,
Aye.
all those in
Aye.
favor say aye.
Got a little now.
What's she doing in Ireland?